Zorro.
No, it's not the Mask of Zorro.
You look like the Green Hornet.
That's right, sir.
Britt Reed. Uh, hey, we're live. This is the Pop Cult Online Power Hour. I'm your host, Rick Gordon, and my faithful sidekick, partner in crime, Bob Breedtall. Say hello, Bob.
Hello.
And if you could, just vamp for a second, because I need to get some light in here somehow.
Okay. So I was recently at the Phoenix Comic Con. I'm going to the Phoenix Comic Con tomorrow. I was recently at the Long Beach Comic Expo. Pretty good show. I got to see Rick Gordon's, one of his favorite guys, Jerry Conway, while I was there. He talked about creating the Punisher, talked about killing Gwen Stacy, talked about a lot of other really interesting stuff, and hopefully we'll get him on the Pop Cult Online sometime soon and talk about all that so you guys can hear him talk also. There was Marv Wolfman there and Len Wein. Marv talked about creating the new Teen Titans. He talked about when he was in the Marvel bullpen, when he was editor-in-chief at Marvel for a while. He had some Stan Lee stories. Indian wrestling with Jim Shooter story. And Len Wein talked about creating Wolverine and, just all kinds of really good stuff. It was there were some really entertaining conversations with creators there. And then I got some comics. Here we have the first appearance of the Black Widow.
Oh, wow.
Filled in a gap in my collection with that one. Here's just a crazy old Wonder Woman comic. A little shiny. Non-shiny. This one I'll have to hold back a little bit, but this is very cool.
Oh, that's nice.
Batman Family by Tone Rodriguez. And then I got some Brian Buccellato. Did a Flash watercolor for me.
Very nice. Very nice.
And then I got a couple of, I am a big fan of this man right here, Doc Savage. I got a Doc Savage sketch cover done. And I got a nice Green Lantern sketch cover done by Norm Rapman. So, all in all, it was a fun show.
And Doc Savage, real quick, I just want to say happy birthday to Doc Savage himself, Ron Ely.
Very cool.
A couple days ago, but he is a friend of mine on Facebook, and the guy just gets better looking every freaking day. It makes me sick. It really does.
I always wanted to get some lobby cards from that Doc Savage movie with Ron Ely on them.
Yeah, that would have been nice.
You're the master of such things. You probably find those in estate sales and stuff.
Yeah, very.
You'll sell them on eBay to somebody else.
That's right. Well, let me just. I like to throw up, comics that are nearby, and I don't remember if I showed this one before, but a weird little Superman.
So who is swifter, smarter, and stronger than Superman?
Got a slightly mildewy smell, but still smells like DC. This one was actually not a bad story. It was Denny O'Neil with Kurt Swan and Murphy Anderson. So, and with one magic word, Shazam.
World's mightiest mortal.
And the interesting thing about this was my father read Shazam as a kid, and this book came out, early 70s, and I started collecting it, and I would always call him Shazam, and he would continually correct me and say, it's not Shazam, that's what he says. His name is Captain Marvel. But I guess nowadays that doesn't hold true.
Oh, that's true. They in the New 52, they just renamed him to reduce the confusion.
Yeah, because I don't believe they own the copyright anymore. Am I correct?
Well, it's not a. They never owned. Marvel snuck in and got the copyright for the title of a book back with Marvel from Kirby back in the 60s, and Marvel's never let it go. As long as as long as Marvel owns that, DC can have the Captain Marvel character in a book, but they cannot publish it as a title on the masthead and be the actual name of a book, which is why it was always Shazam or the Power of Shazam or some variant of that as the name of the book, though they could call him Captain Marvel inside. So that was the deal. It was, that once Marvel got the copyright, and, it's also why, when they killed Captain Marvel, that they made, Ms. Marvel, and then they ultimately had a Captain Marvel. They kind of made her Captain Marvel. Well, that's where Monica Rambeau came in, right?
Okay, yeah.
Because they needed to have a Captain Marvel to keep a grasp on that copyright. So when they killed Marvel, then they had to have a Captain Marvel. So, of course, then they went with Monica Rambeau as Captain Marvel. And then after they changed her up, then Carol Danvers, who was Ms. Marvel, then she was Binary Warbird, and other kind of things. Then they took her and they flipped her back to Captain Marvel. It's confusing.
Yeah,
it's just,
I'd always wondered. I read the first series recently, the Ms. Marvel series. I think I've got an essential, and it was a lot better than I remembered it. But every subsequent relaunch of Ms. Marvel, even though the stories were well written and the art was great, it just never really caught on. It was almost like a Wonder Woman effect. Like you can't. It just seems difficult to sell a female character for any length of time, with the exception of Red Sonja. Yeah,
well,
strange.
I know why I bought Ms. Marvel when I was a teenager.
Because she could fly?
Yeah, that was it.
And that's exactly why I read. That's why I read
prototype belly shirt that she wore as a costume.
Yeah, but then again, so did Giant Man. Or Black Goliath.
It didn't do the same thing for me. As attractive as Clint Barton was in the Giant Man outfit.
Oh, so tell me about Long Beach. How was that?
It was gorgeous. I mean, Long Beach, it's a small con. The spring con is, this was the first year, it was 2 days. It's very small, but they packed a lot into the 2 days. I think that the biggest thing going forward is it's in Long Beach. It's right, the convention center's right on Long Beach Harbor. It was beautiful weather. It was a gorgeous day both days. There's a lot of, they've revitalized that downtown Long Beach area in the last probably 5-6 years. There's a ton of restaurants around there, and you got the ocean, you got all kinds of stuff. And the con, like most cons nowadays, there's huge cosplay element to the cons. So there were a ton of people in outfits, and there were some really good cosplayers. I mean, like really good looking. I don't tend to take pictures of them because there's plenty of people taking pictures. There's pictures all over the internet of people in costumes. In fact, it's to the point where anytime I say I'm going to a Comic-Con to anybody, their first or second question out of their mouth is, what are you dressing up as? Right? And I have never gone, much though I was wearing this Green Hornet mask here a minute ago, I have never gone to a con wearing a costume, and I never planned to go to a con wearing a costume. But since all the media kind of ever shows, because it's so visually dynamic, is they show people in costumes, and they want to talk to people in costumes, especially the attractive ladies, but they'll have the goofy-looking people in costumes too, just for the, look at this fool wearing this costume that they shouldn't be wearing kind of aspect too. So TV, all the comic book websites, they take pictures of people in costumes. Almost every con picture, if you actually look at it, they're just probably they give the impression that 90% of the people at a con are wearing a costume. And when you go to cons, how many people are wearing costume? It's the exact opposite. It's maybe 10% of the people are wearing costumes, and 90% of the people are, just wearing regular clothes. In fact, if you take out that there's probably 10% of the people in costume, and then like 40% of the people in like a superhero kind of T-shirt or something, and then 50% of the people are wearing actual regular clothes, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it really gives the impression that but I don't have a problem with the cosplayers, except when they stop in the middle of the aisle, for people to take pictures of them and they interrupt the traffic flow. But it's fun for them, and that's great. Where else? They're usually not going to be hanging around wearing the costumes anywhere else. But I did a blog on the con on Comic Spectrum, and one of the things that I said there was that any good con is got multiple personality disorder, I think, and that is a good con. You can have 5-6 different people go to that same convention on the same days and have a completely different experience, right? So I go to the con and I like the printed comics and I like creators, so I spend a lot of time in Artist Alley. I go to the panels that have creators at them, or maybe a publisher panel. That's the kind of stuff that I enjoy doing. Someone that's into anime, they go to anime panels, they do anime things. People who are into TV shows, they can pretty much, almost any Comic-Con nowadays, they've got, all the popular TV shows and movies are very strongly represented. The cosplay people can go to the con and they've got like a whole cosplay track where they can do just that kind of thing. There's gaming that can go on. Most conventions have tracks, as did Long Beach, on creating comic books. So if you want to get into creating your own comics or web comics, there's a whole track for you to learn about how to do that. So same event, but lots of different ways to experience it, the convention. And I think that's great. I think that's essential for a really good con, and that's what differentiates a convention to me from just like the local show that's got some dealer tables and they're selling some old comics. It's the panels, it's the people in costumes, it's the variety that really does it. And, Long Beach was a great show for that.
Yeah. Do you think cons have been around for a while, but they seem to be getting more and more mainstream? Do you think that's going to hurt it in the long run, or is this something that you think, years from now, our grandkids are going to be, going to cons and we can sit in our rocking chairs and tell them stories about, San Diego before it got out of control, or New York when it was fun? And
well, I think it's what you make of it, right? I mean, San Diego has no doubt changed tremendously over the years. I've been going 23 years to San Diego, and it's almost a completely different show at this point. Like when I went to WonderCon last month, like WonderCon is what San Diego was 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. Long Beach is what San Diego was 20 years ago, to some extent. Like Long Beach didn't have a single big publisher at it. There's no Marvel or DC. In fact, the only publisher that was at Long Beach at all was Aspen Comics, and they're local, so they come to the show, and that's great. But not a lot of publisher presence, right? But even way back when, San Diego had Marvel and DC at it, probably more so than today in comics. But I think part of it is that schizophrenic aspect, right? Just like you get the cosplayers get a lot of attention, I think the Hollywood stuff gets an inordinate amount of attention because that's what's mainstream and that's what brings people into the show. I'm going to Phoenix. I'm leaving tomorrow to drive out to Phoenix, and I'm going to go this weekend to the Phoenix Con. And just over the last 10 years that I've been going to the Phoenix Con, it's changed a tremendous amount also. The Phoenix Con now has a huge focus on media. It's got, you know, Stephen Amell, who's, you know, Green Arrow, and Manu Bennett, who's on that show, and it's got people from The Walking Dead, and it's got people from Doctor Who, and it's got, you know, it's got all these actors. And when you look at the website, there's no comic book creators on the main advertisement for the Phoenix Comic Con. It's all people from the media, right? And San Diego is shifting that way too, where when you see the news reports about San Diego, if it's not somebody in a costume, it's some celebrity or somebody off a TV, because what they're, you know, when you cover an event, you're trying to appeal to the broadest audience. You're trying to get those touch points, right? So I don't think anybody really wants to educate somebody in the media about something different. They just want to, like, what's the biggest splash, and, you know, what's the least common denominator that I can get the most people interested the quickest. And that falls back to media, flashy costumes, you know, celebrities. So if you have any of those things, you're going to concentrate on that. And that's, you know, when you look at New York also, I think, you know, they've been, you know, you kind of get a shift where you concentrate on those things. But if you go to the show, there are those pure comic book things that you can do. You know, you've got the people selling back issues, you've got the artists in Artist Alley, you've got the panels with the comic book publishers and the comic book creators. But then right beside them, in the big ballrooms, you've got the Hollywood people, and you've got, you know, the flashy kind of things. Mm-hmm. That's how Phoenix is going to be. You know, it's like when you go to Phoenix, and, you know, they've got, you know, in a small room, they've got Chris Claremont, you know, and then in another point, they've got a Jack Kirby, the King of Comics panel, and it's got Mark Evanier and a bunch of other creators talking about how Jack Kirby was a huge influence on them, and I'm going to that, right? Mm-hmm. But then on the other side, you got, like, the big ballroom. You're going to have Adam West, Burt Ward, and Julie Newmar in it talking about Batman, right? And in another big ballroom, you have Stan Lee, you know, being Stan Lee, and people are going to pack. You'll have a couple of thousand people jammed in those rooms, but you go over and, you know, you have spotlight on Fred Van Lente, or, you know, Kevin Maguire and Francis Manapul talking about the Batman Rogues Gallery and who they like in the Batman Rogue. Maybe because it's Batman, you'll have 200 people in there, but I'm guessing you'll maybe have 50 or 75 people in there, depending on what it's up against. That's, you know, flashier.
Right.
So I think it's all good. It gets people into the con. You know, they come. You know, you see big lines of people that want to get an autograph from, you know, Norman Reedus from The Walking Dead, or, you know, when it used to be, you know, you'd have, you know, Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher, and maybe 5-10 years ago, more so than now, you'd have all the Star Trek Next Generation actors there. I remember one year I went, and it was almost, I think the entire 7 from Next Generation were all at the con, and they were signing autographs and taking pictures. And, you know, you'll have different people there, and people like that. They go up, they buy their autograph opportunity, and, you know, it's all about what's fun for the people going to the con. My hope is that you get somebody in, they get drawn in by that, and maybe they'll wander by some booth and, like, pick up a comic book and start actually reading a physical comic book and start liking it because they were at this show, that they were exposed to that kind of thing.
Right. It almost seems like, well, we discussed before, kids today, and it's becoming increasingly difficult to get their attention because there's just so much competition with the huge budget summer movies and the hyper-realistic video games. What do you have to do when that 15-year-old's walking by? How do you get his attention? And it seems like, a convention is a good way because it gives them a little taste of everything. But the thing I was wondering, since you go to way more conventions than I do, what would you say is the main demographic that is driving these shows? Is it guys like us? Is it guys younger than us? Is it, guys dragging their kids? How do you think it breaks down?
What's fascinating to me over the last few years is the tremendous uptake in all the different cons I go to of female attendees. Back 15, 20 years ago when I'd go to a con, it was your typical, a bunch of guys, a bunch of the standard guys wearing superhero T-shirts, and I was one of them, and every now and again you'd have someone who'd be dragging a wife or a girlfriend along, and I was that guy too, because I would bring Janine, sometimes when the kids were little, and they clearly didn't really want to be there, but they were humoring their husband or boyfriend. Nowadays, you go to the con, and at least 50% of the people there are female, and they're just as into it as the guys are. They're just as likely to be wearing some T-shirt or some, little not ridiculous costume, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I don't mean like a full-on costume, but they might be wearing like an Adventure Time hat or, some kind of jewelry or, something. You'll have a girl there in a TARDIS dress or something, just or a dress that looks like R2-D2 or something like that. And it's just, since it's opened up to more kinds of fandom, and I think really the fact that they have become more pop culture conventions than comic conventions, that's really what's opened up the audience on these conventions, that you have now people who, if you like Doctor Who, or if you like, Star Wars or anime or superheroes, and, when you like superheroes, you're just as likely to, the superheroes you like are the Marvel movies or the TV shows or the cartoon shows, and on cartoons it's not even just, there's a lot of anime. At the Phoenix Con, for instance, there's a tremendous, a big anime community that goes to that one, and the anime cosplay, which is different, than the cosplay, the superhero kind of cosplay. But you see lots of people that are dressed up, Doctor Who, Star Trek, Star Wars. Adventure Time is big still. You got a bunch of superheroes. You got a lot of everything. But it has opened up and made it kind of socially acceptable, I guess. These guys, they have some place to go, and you got, even at a smaller show like Long Beach, there had to have been at least 4,000 or 5,000 people at this show. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the actual number was, but it was pretty crowded on Saturday in the middle of the day. And there's so many people there and so many people in the costumes, and they can go there and people aren't, saying, oh, look at this. On Saturday there was a tea convention going on downstairs. And those people were like just freaking out in a good way, wanting to take pictures of the people in costumes, and they had out front, they had a bunch of vehicles from TV and movies, so they had the Batmobile from the Michael Keaton movie.
Oh,
they had,
I like that one.
They had the Kit from Knight Rider, and they had a couple of Jurassic Park cars, and they had the DeLorean from Back to the Future, and there was all these different vehicles, and the people because that was just outside the convention center, and people were freaking out about that and getting their pictures taken by these things, and I think it's fun for everyone when they connect with something that they're familiar with. You know, it's like people can say, I've seen that, you know, on TV or, you know, whatever, and now I can actually be live and in person and experience it in a different way, and that's fun for people, I think.
Yeah, it's almost like the cons have become a safe harbor for you to be as nerdy as you want, and not feel any shame or remorse or anything. You just go and you geek out. You know, and at whatever level, it may be something as simple as you're wearing a baseball cap that it's a Flash logo, or a T-shirt, or maybe something more elaborate, or maybe you just want to be around people who are into that stuff. It's very comforting. That's the weird thing about the cons. As crowded as it gets, there's like a commonality between everybody that's going, and everybody's there just to have a good time. You rarely do you see any type of strife or conflict. You know, even when, like, especially in New York, when in the early years they really didn't have a handle on traffic flow, so there were times where you're up against each other, packed like a subway, and people still managed to get along because I think they were having a good time. But I would love to see that just kind of spill over into other aspects of society, not just, you know, once a year at a designated spot. I love to see little local shows popping up more and more, not competing with the big shows, but just adding a little something extra, you know?
Well, there's so many conventions now. When I was putting together the con calendar on Comic Spectrum, and I don't even have the stamina to put every single one-day local, you know, hotel show, I call them, you know, that's not at a convention center, but they're just at some local civic center or hotel or some smaller venue like that. I just put multi-day shows on this con calendar, and there's pretty much at least one convention every single weekend this year somewhere. Some weekends there's 4 or 5 conventions in different parts of the country stacked up on top of each other.
Wow.
You know, if you go just to the main Comic Spectrum page, in the middle of the page there's a con calendar link, and it'll bring you to the con calendar. It's right to the left of the Pop Cult Online embedded video. So, you know, just looking at so many of these things, and I even put international ones on there. It's fascinating to me to see when the Malta Comic Con, or there's different ones in India. There's 2 or 3 in India. There's a bunch in England now. You know, and again, I'm only putting on Comic Cons. You can go around and there's other ones that are more sci-fi cons, or just they're full on, they're just unabashed. We're a pop culture con that maybe it has some comics at it, but they don't even have comic in the name of it. And that's maybe the direction some of these shows are going, because realistically, a Comic-Con, any Comic-Con nowadays, is probably at best 15 to 20% comics. You know,
yeah.
I mean, you might have things that are in, you know, that actually had their roots in comics, like a lot of these TV shows and cartoons and other kind of things like that that are at them. They have their roots in comics, but what the people are there for is the non-comic book media version of that property.
Right.
But that's okay, right? I mean, it's what, you know, it's entertainment for people, and it's just, that's what it's about. But like you said, it's fun, I think, for people to be around other folks that will not tease them about it, because there's still a stigma, you know. It's getting more accepted, but it's still, you know, a lot of people I know, they won't put their real name on a comic book message board because they don't want people they work with to find out who they are. They won't put their picture. They don't want, they have an alias and some, you know, you know, right? These these guys, and they're just, or maybe they'll use their first name and last initial. They don't want to go full on revealing who they are to, the public. It's, there's still a stigma to it, but I don't see it a whole lot different than liking a sport team. It's just like, how's it different if you go and put on a Superman T-shirt and go to a convention versus painting your entire body blue and orange and sitting out in 10-degree weather, screaming, with a giant foam finger or something like that. I mean, they're both kind of crazy stuff, if you think about it. One has
a lot less beer involved.
Yeah, one has less beer involved, but it's just one's more socially accepted, I don't think someone who's a hardcore sport fan does not feel like they can't tell people that they're a sports fan.
Right.
Whereas someone who's a comic book fan, they a lot of times feel they can't say they're a comic book fan, although even if you're a comic book fan, people will generally feel comfortable talking about going to see the Captain America movie.
Mm-hmm.
Or going to see Godzilla, or going to see Spider-Man. That's a socially acceptable water cooler conversation, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But you can't talk about a lot of times. Oh, the latest issue of you can talk about what happened on the Walking Dead TV show, but that same person would not feel the same about talking about the latest issue of the Walking Dead comic book in the exact same setting.
Even if he called it a graphic novel.
Right.
So, tell me, let's talk about Long Beach, and how's my friend Jerry doing?
Jerry was great. He was standing around kind of near the front of the room when I got the back of the room, rather, by the doors, right? And I just went up to him and I said, "Hey, Jerry, Rick Gordon says hi." Oh, Rick, I know Rick, and how is he doing? That's when I was texting you saying, Jerry says hi. So
yeah, he's been traveling a lot lately, with the family stuff, and once he gets settled, we'll get him on the show. I'm sure you've heard my interviews with him in the past. He is probably one of the better interviewees that I've had, because he's completely honest and open and just really engaging, and he's got great stories. I mean, he's just a wonderful person.
No, it was excellent. Janine went with me to the Long Beach show on Saturday. It was our wedding anniversary. And people, this is the kind of wife I have that I'm blessed with, is that everyone else is like astonished that my wife would consider going to a comic book convention with me on our wedding anniversary, when they have to build a little shrine to their wife and put graven offerings at the base of it on their wedding anniversary, right? And it's like, well, it's our wedding anniversary. It's not just her wedding anniversary, right? So This year, she's like, well, I knew you wanted to go to the con. You look forward to it, and I don't want to not see you all day, so I'll spend the day with you. She went with me to Jerry's panel, and she loved listening to Jerry talk. She didn't really care that much about comic books, reading them or anything, but she was riveted by the stories he was telling and kind of the creative process. He told one story about when he gave Peter Parker the ulcer. Remember back when Peter had the... He had kind of gotten a little bit of a pre-ulcer, right? And he went to the doctor, and the doctor told him, and the draft was going on back then, and the doctor told him that, if you have a full-blown ulcer, you're going to, be 4F, and you won't be eligible for the draft. So he's like, well, what do I do to, for the ulcer? He said, well, don't eat spicy food, don't drink coffee, don't do these things. The Jerry's like, well, so the first thing I did was drank a lot of coffee, ate a lot of really spicy food, I gave myself a full-blown ulcer, and was declared 4F. So
wow.
it's just And it was in that vein, he was telling he was very engaging, you know the man. And he was just wonderful. That's the reason why I go to these conventions. I like to buy some back issue comics. I like to get some sketches from people, but I like standing in Artist Alley talking to creators. And I like going to panels with creators and getting that interaction and hearing them tell their stories about the creative process. It's like I was far more interested hearing Len Wein talk about the process of creating Wolverine than I want to hear him talk about, whether Wolverine can beat, Batman in a fight or something. It's just like, that's not interesting to me. What is interesting is, him looking up a Wolverine and finding it's like a little feisty creature with claws and, talking about how he went about coming up with the character.
Wow.
So, Jerry talked about the Punisher. Jerry talked about, creating the Punisher and what went into that. He talked about Gwen Stacy, of course, because that always comes up. And he seems to be accepting of that at this point, especially since it was in the last movie. It's just standard. I'm going to talk about this because people want to hear about it, and I don't mind. So it was fun.
When he was talking about the Punisher, a conversation that I had with him, I don't want to say the word bitter because I think that's too strong, but he definitely had some strong feelings about the character's popularity and the movies and the merchandising and how Marvel generally just really doesn't pay. But, he's constantly getting checks from DC characters that he's created. So it just fascinated me how different the two companies are.
Yeah, he touched on that a little bit, and he didn't kind of dwell on it, but he kind of like somebody asked him about Punisher, who he thought the best actor was that's played Punisher, and he's like, never seen a Punisher movie. No interest in it because, they kind of screwed him over and he didn't get any kind of royalty of any kind for any of the Punisher movies. Strangely, though, when Marv Wolfman was talking about Blade, they didn't do the same thing to Marv because Marv talked about creating Blade. He talked about, Cyborg. He talked, and it was really fascinating. It was a really strong African American influence because of those characters, and he's got a fan base there because half the room were black guys, and they were fascinated, and they wanted to hear him tell stories about, why did you do this? And Marv's like, well, people are people. I grew up in New York in a very integrated neighborhood, and it's just, I don't see color except in that there are too many white guys in comics, so when I created a character and it didn't matter one way or another, I thought that I would just create, a black character. Mm-hmm. Why not? And, then especially that he didn't make it, Black Blade was another plus, and stuff, like almost, the earliest forms of not having black attached to the name of any character that was African American, that's so it was actually very interesting to hear him talk about that.
I wish I had known he was going to be there. I would have told you to say hello because I'm very close with Marv also. We're both adult gamers, and that's I helped him get his PlayStation. Got him a good deal, and we chat back and forth pretty frequently. And I wish I'd known he was going to be there. I got to pay more attention to these things.
Yeah, that's again, to me, those are the kind of things that I like about going to a con. But I think there are other people that went to that same con and they had very different interests, but those interests were met also, by being able to, go to some panel that was talking about how to create a webcomic or, how to license your creations or, whatever, how to, there was a big cosplay element to this con, very explicit, where they had workshops about making costumes, and they had like a little boutique where you could buy, and there were people who were hardcore into cosplay that, they were selling like just different, wigs or gloves. I didn't go in there, but it looked like, it had like all the different, pieces and stuff. So I think it was fun for everyone. And again, boy, that's such a beautiful location for a convention. Of all the convention centers that I've been to, it's in like the nicest location. I mean, San Diego is nice. It's on the water and everything, but you got to walk pretty far to get to the restaurants. Long Beach Convention Center, they're like right across the street. It's much less traffic. Again, it's a smaller show. You can't put 100,000 people in the Long Beach Convention Center. It's just not that big. So you're limited in how big that con is ever going to be.
So, would you ever wear a costume to a con? But let's just say you have an unlimited budget, plenty of time. Is there a costume that you would wear just to see that you could wear it, or is that just not your thing at all?
Probably not. I mean, like I would, I tell you. I mean, if I had, heck, I could put the Green Hornet mask on, right? If I had. If I had a green trench coat or a nice green suit or whatever that fit me well, once I lose the weight I want to lose, and that's the one thing. It's like I've been losing weight. I don't know if you can maybe tell in the camera or not, but I've lost 65 pounds in the last 6 or 7 months.
Wow.
I still want to lose like another 45 pounds, but I was for a long time. I've been heavy for a long, long time, and it's just. I take pity on people. I don't want to see big fat dudes wearing spandex and stuff at a con. I don't wear T-shirts for that same reason. I take pity on my fellow con goer. They don't need to see the big fat dude in an ill-fitting T-shirt. So I wear regular.
You don't want to be the big Silver Surfer?
Yeah. But if I got down and actually looked good in a something. I don't know that I would ever wear spandex of any sort, which, most...
Well, I mean, what if it was just something simpler? Like, I can totally see myself just doing a Nick Fury thing. As a matter of fact, at several of the conventions I've gone to, I had an eye patch in my pocket, just in case.
Well, you can pull it off, man.
But one of my sons said if I shave the goatee and keep the handlebar mustache going, I could go as an ultimate dum-dum.
There you go.
I just got to get a derby.
Get a derby and say wahoo.
So, you're like me. We go to the cons, and it's all about the people. I've only been to New York, and every time I've been there, I've never come home with anything, even though they have tons of, great vintage toys and comics and just, everything that would just look great in this room. But for me, it's all about the people. It's all about meeting the creators. It's all about meeting up with friends. Facebook has really changed the nature, I believe, of friendships in this country, so that people that I interact with every day, several times a day, now I finally get to see them in the flesh, and it's a nice feeling. And we're all in this area, like I said before. There's a commonality. We're all collectors. We're all into comics and pop culture. So it's just a good time. For me, it's just like a big party. and that just happens to have a lot of cool swag around. So
You don't
I
buy
do,
anything though.
I here's the thing, I am cheap. I'm not like Scrooge McDuck cheap, but generally there's no real good deals to be found at a con. I felt. I
It
mean,
just depends on the con. I think that certain things, like I don't. One of my favorite things to do, and it has been for years, is at Artist Alley. I like to get various commissions or original art, right? So the first thing I do on the first day of the con is I'll bring some of those blank cover comics, like, the ones I was showing you, right? There's a Turok, where Turok's taking down a dinosaur. So I'll seek out some artists on the first day, and I'll drop off some sketch cover comics, or in some cases I just have them do like that Flash one that Brian Buccellato did that's just on regular paper, and I'll just commission, a sketch from them. And those are anywhere from $30 to $60 a piece. So I mean, I don't think that's excessive. I don't get things from people who want like $200 for a sketch, but I can usually drop $30 to $60 on a sketch because I think they're cool. I like to have them I put them on my spinner rack, and it's a good memento show. But that's one of the main things I do is I get a sketch, or when it's an artist that's selling their original art, since I do like to collect original art, I buy that because when you can get it directly from the artist as opposed to from a dealer, you get a lot better deal, right? Because the dealers just jack up the price. You pay twice as much if you buy it from a dealer. So I like to do that. And then certain back issue dealers will have good deals, and others do not. And it's just, you just got to know who, like at Phoenix Con, I look forward to it because there's this one guy, his name is Ed Robertson, and every year he's at Phoenix Con, and I go to him, and he has, a lot of times, his books that he has are probably around half guide, and if I buy, 5 or 6 books, he gives me a little bit of a break even in addition to that. And a lot of times he'll have like a box of books that are in, like very good condition that are $5 a pop, and maybe they're books that are $10 to $15 in the guide, and he just has them, $5 a piece. And I'll riffle through that, and I'll find a stack of, 10 or 15 books that I want to get, which is maybe, let's say, $50 to $75. So if I got 15 at $75, he'd say, "Give me $60."
Yeah, those kind of guys I like.
Yeah. So if you find a guy like that, then it's fun. You get that kind of thing.
Yeah. Do you get the Overstreet Guide every year, or
yes.
Is that you do?
I get it because the Hero Initiative, and I'm gonna. So the Hero Initiative.
Oh yeah.
So the Hero Initiative each year debuts at San Diego Con a custom cover Hero Initiative version of the guide that they make, like I think 500 copies of, and it's, I don't know, it's like $30, and it's a hardcover, so it's the same price that you'd pay, but then since I'm a member of the Hero Initiative, they like knock off $5, so it's like $25. But then I'll like donate or buy some other things from them, so I end up spending the money anyway because it's a charity. So it's like I'll give them whatever, But every year I tend to buy the Overstreet Guide from them at San Diego. But they sell it through their website too. Whatever they don't sell at San Diego.
Because I've become, I think, too dependent on the internet, and I do remember back in '89. Well, no, maybe it was '87. maybe '87. I went on a vacation and I took an Overstreet guide with me, and I just kind of read it. Now I just skimmed through and just read that thing. It was very very entertaining. You know,
I like it because it's not the most up to the minute prices necessarily. It's not going to tell you what the latest hot comic is, but it's a good guide, right?
yeah,
Right
yeah, it
there.
gives you a general.
So I know what is a reasonable price for something, and you know, if I know that okay, like that Iron Man, that Tales of Suspense I got with the first appearance of Black Widow. I mean, the last version of the guide came out last year. That the price keeps going up on that because you know Black Widow's been in the movie. She's got her own series again, and it's just you know anything that gets a movie, it just goes nuts. You know, like all the old Rocket Raccoon first appearances, Thanos stuff, Groot. That like Tales to Astonish 13. That's the first Groot. That's gone nuts because of the movie stuff. Anytime somebody's in a movie, it's like if you haven't gotten those old comics yet, you're pretty much screwed. You know, the prices just go up on them, and it's going to be, you know, I don't know if it's even going to be in my lifetime if they settle down. So it's just like you consign yourself, okay, I'm going to pay more. If I want these books, I'm going to pay more than I would have otherwise had to pay for these. I am really glad I completed my Spider-Man run when I did, with the exception of Amazing Fantasy 15, and I'm kind of out of luck on Amazing Fantasy 15, I think, just because I can't spend the kind of money that it would cost me to get a decent copy of that.
Now, has that seen a bump? You think because of the series? Yeah.
All the Spider-Man movies. I mean, just in general, that's an evergreen. And same thing with FF #1. I mean, that's a really expensive book, even though there's never been a decent Fantastic Four movie, and all indications are that this next one's going to just suck.
Can I quote you on that?
You can.
Official prediction. But we will go.
Did you hear the latest on the Fantastic Four thing? Marvel's actually, there's been like unsubstantiated accounts that Marvel's going to cancel the Fantastic Four comic book because they don't want to lend credence, or they don't want to lend additional audience to the Fox version of the movie.
Wow.
Because it's just so far off base from what the Fantastic Four is. So they're going to do away with Ultimate FF and FF. Now, that's the story, right? But then you look a little deeper into that. Well, Sony's doing the Spider-Man movies, and Marvel's not cooling off on putting out Spider-Man comics. And Fox is doing all kinds of X-Men movies that they're blowing it away with, and Marvel's not showing any signs of slowing down on doing X-Men comics. They can't sell Fantastic Four comics to save their life. You know, no matter who they, you know, what great reviews. I mean, Hickman had an excellent run on Fantastic Four, and even when he did, it wasn't one of the top-selling books at Marvel. You know, these last couple of writers and artist teams they've had on it have just not been doing it sales number-wise. So when they're, like, using as an excuse the Fantastic Four movie to say, well, we're not going to do Fantastic Four comics, because I think it's just like, you know what? We're not able to do Fantastic Four comics right now.
Let's take a break, yeah.
Let's just take a step away, but let's blame it on this other thing.
What was the last FF run that you remember that you liked a lot?
Oh,
For
the
me,
Hickman. The Hickman.
the Fern run.
The Hickman run that ended a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he did the best Fantastic Four, probably, in my opinion, since John Byrne's run. And John Byrne, for me, it's like Lee and Kirby,
Yep.
John Byrne, Jonathan Hickman. And there's some other good runs in there, but those are the top 3 on FF for me. I mean, you can't touch Lee and Kirby. I mean,
No.
every single issue.
I'm a Kirby fan, but I love what he did, say from like issue 40 on. 40 to 100 was just.
I mean, every issue they're like creating the Inhumans. They're creating Silver Surfer and Galactus. They create Black Panther. They create Adam Warlock. You know, it's just like they're just all this stuff happening. It's just amazing, amazing comics. Just the creativity that went on.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Oh, boy. Well, I hate to cut this short, but it is getting a little late. I know it's just dinner time for you out there in your weird time zone, which I still don't understand. I don't understand how that works. I'm talking to you right now, and it's after 11 o'clock, and you're sitting there like it's 8 o'clock.
Yeah, I know.
How is that possible?
The sun's still up.
So theoretically, I should know things before you. I should have the winning lottery numbers.
That's right. That's like people in Australia. They're a day ahead, man. It's like, whenever I talk to some of these people I know in Australia on Facebook, and it's like, what's it like tomorrow, future boy? You know? What's Thursday going to be like?
So you're going to be busy this weekend in Phoenix.
I will be home Sunday night. I think I'm going to skip Sunday. I'm just going to, because I've got, like, there's a lot of friends that I've got, like you say, you know, we're going to go to dinners and we're going to do stuff. And, like, they have their art auction on Saturday, and then we usually have a pretty big dinner on Saturday night. So I'm probably just going to sleep in on Saturday and then drive home. So I should be home by, you know, 3, 4 o'clock at the outside on Sunday, my time.
Okay. Sounds good. Then we'll get together Sunday and talk about Phoenix.
And
I actually know quite a few people in Arizona.
Don't forget to ask me about Taschen. Let's leave that as a teaser.
Okay. I'll put that in the show notes. Okay. Sounds like a plan. And I'm going to wear a different hat because this one is very uncomfortable on my bald head. It's very itchy.
I would wear a different one also.
Okay. Sounds like a plan. All right, buddy. I will talk to you soon. And thanks to everybody for joining us. And we'll see you, you know, whenever. Oh, the Comic Spectrum, right?
Oh, ComicSpectrum.com. Check it out.
There you
All
go.
the latest reviews of the latest, coolest comics. I just put up a review today for Big Trouble in Little China #1, written by Eric Powell and John Carpenter.
Eric Powell. I have a connection with him, which I'll explain in the next episode. All right. Good night, everybody.
Yep.